So, good day everyone. I am Teacher Mayan. So, today's discussion, we will tackle about the Japanese haiku. So, let's have fun today. Are you guys ready? So, now let's start our discussion. So, does any one of you have any idea what haiku is? Anyone from the class would you like to volunteer? So, haiku. So haiku, no, it is a type of a short form poetry, like originally came from Japan. A traditional Japanese haiku is a three-line poem with 17 syllables. Like it is written in a 575 syllable count. So the traditional focus of a haiku poetry are nature themes and like imagery evoking a specific season. So haiku poems it often features just a position of a two image like a nature and the seasons. Like it is describing the season was the original purpose of haiku, and to these days poets often focus on the natural world and how it changed throughout the year. So the term haiku, it derives from the first element of the word, which is haikai. It means a humorous form of ringa or link verse poem, and the second element of the word huko, the initial stanza of a ringa. So the huko, which set the tone of a ringa, had to mention in its three lines such as subjects as a season, time of day, and the dominant features of the landscape. So it's making it almost an independent poem. So the hoka, often interchangeably called haikai, became known as the haiku late in the 19th century, like when it was entirely divested of its original function of opening a sequence of verse. So now, let's take a look at the history of the haiku form. So, haiku, it began in the 13th century as Japan as the opening phrase of ringa. It is an oral poem, generally 100 stanzas long, which was also composed syllabically. The much shorter haiku broke away from ringa in the 16th century and was mastered a century later by Matsuo Basho, who wrote this classic haiku. So this is the haiku poem that was written by Matsuo Basuo. So an old pond, a frog jumps in, the sounds of water. So what does it mean? So the poem, it is a very simple poem. So like it was written by Basho. Like he composed it at a haiku gathering like in 1886 when he was 43 years old. So it's really a simple poem, but a haiku implies the information of five senses, which are eyesight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste. So the old pond, like it means the deserted scene and there is no sound around the pond. So a frog breaks the silence like by jumping into the pond by the sound of water, and after jumping, like the silence comes again. So the haiku poem would evoke the image and sound that Matsu Basho saw and heard, but it's not exactly true because the fact of frog and open and sound, like most people, even Japanese, like they think the poem shows that Basho actually experienced and moved to the scene. However, he didn't see the scene, even the frog. So the haiku gathering was held at his hermitage Bashuan with a pond. So haiku poets decided a theme at a haiku gathering and it was a frog at the day. So Basho had to put the word into a poem. So since there was a pond at the hermitage, so like he possibly heard the sound of the water, but speaking about the pond, he didn't see it when he composed the poem. So according to the record of his disciple Shiko, Basho came up with the word a frog leaps in and the sound of the water before an old pond. After polishing, he decided to use an old pond. So he created a famous haiku poem in the Hermitage, and he didn't see the pond. The pond of the poem isn't reality, even there was nearby from it. So he made the world of silence, which broken by a small creature in his mind. And furthermore, like Basho made a novel attempt to compose about a frog. Like previously, all of the Japanese poets used the word aiming at the effects of the sounds of the amphibians croaking. It was the first time that the poem which focused on the sound of a splashing that a frog made. So now, since I'm done discussing what a Japanese haiku is, so I will continue by giving you an example of what a haiku poem is. So I have I have a two poets here, which are Basho and Kobayashi Isa. So let's focus more on Matsuo Basho. So he was born in 1644 near in Ino in Iga province. So like he died in November 28, 1694. He was the most famous poet of the Edo period in Japan. So during his lifetime, no, so Basho was recognized for his work in the collaborative Haikai no Ringa from today after centuries of commentary. So like he is organized as the greatest master of haiku, like then called Huku. So Basho was introduced to poetry at a young age, and after integrating himself into the intellectual scene of Edo, like in a modern Tokyo, he quickly became well known throughout Japan. So he made a living as a teacher, but then renounced the social, urban life of the literary circles and was inclined to wander throughout the country. Like he was sailing west, east, and far into the northern wilderness to gain inspiration for his writing. So his poems were influenced by his first-hand experience of the world, like around them. Like he often encapsulating the feeling of a scene in a simple elements. So this poem is entitled Kosanotomo or Sumikawara Yuzo or Hinanoe. So, a honor of the old Dutch hat is also changed to another. It's the Dolls Festival. So, these haiku poems, like it means that Basho gave his house to another before going on a journey, and apparently it seems that the new residents were a family with a girl, so that's why it's a Dolls Festival. So let's go to the next Japanese haiku poet. So he is Kobayashi Isa. So he was born on June 15, 1763 in Kashiwabara, Shinano province of Japan, and then he died on January 5, 1828 in Kashiwabara. So Kobayashi Isa is a Japanese poet that is also known as Kobayashi Yatoro and Kobayashi Nobuyaki. Since he was born in Kashiwabara, Shinano province, so he eventually took the pen name Isa, which means cup of tea, or according to poet Robert Hass, a single bubble in a stepping tea. So Isa's haiku are as attentive to the small creatures of the world like mosquitoes, bats, cats, as they are tinged with sorrow and awareness of the nuances of human behavior. So in addition to haiku, Isa wrote pieces that intertwine prose and poetry, like including Journal of My Father's Last Day and the Year of My Life. So Kobayashi Isa was a Japanese poet and labeled Buddhist praise of the Judo Shinsu. So he is also known for his haiku poems and journals. So he is better known as simply Isa. He is regarded as one of the four haiku masters in Japan, along with Basho, Buson, and Shiki the Great Four. So this is the poem wrote by Kobayashi Isa, Harukaziya or Oshini Hikarite or Zinkuji. In English, the spring breeze being pulled by a cow to the Zinkuji temple. So it means no, like from the Japanese tradition legend, like an old woman who had no faith found herself rather, in Zenkoji while chasing the cow to hang the dried cloth on the horn. As a result, she began to believe Buddhism deeply. So that's all for today, class. So those are the examples of Japanese haiku poems. So I hope you guys learned something for today's discussion. So thank you everyone for listening to my class today, and I hope you all have a wonderful night today. Thank you and have a good day.